Good afternoon, good morning, everyone. My name is Hazel Contreras. I'm the coordinator of Alianza Americas in Central America. And as Alianza Americas, and together with the organization Hendrik Boyle, we would like to welcome you to this conversation regarding Nicaragua. From April 2018, the Central American country was submerged in darkness with the regime autocratic. And 4 years after this, it's urgent to continue this conversation to analyze the facts and to recent measures against civil society, opposition, and any other dissident voices that defend the human rights in Nicaragua. We thank you for your interest in participating. We invite you to send your questions through the chat and or Q&A on the control bar. We will begin this conversation with Marco Navarrete, in representation of the organization of Hendrik Boyle for Difference in Central America. We'll give you a short context about the social political reality in Nicaragua. Thank you, Hazel. Thank you, Alianza Americas, and especially thank you to our panelists and moderator, who in this case, we have the pleasure to direct this event. From the organization we appreciate this partnerships to denounce and talk about the Nicaraguan reality. Especially this week, 4 years ago in April 2018, it was the division in the recent history of Nicaragua after repressed marches in Nicaragua. And with the fire and the reserve, there were massive protests that confronted the Ortega government, the police, with over 350 people that have perished, thousands of people that were hurt, and hundreds of arbitrary detentions. The impunity due to severe violations to human rights has been a constant thing in Nicaragua. After being a revolutionary example in Central America, it became a nefarious friend with countries with authoritarian interests. The control of Ortega comes from the judicial system, and seemingly further 2010, the critical situation in Nicaragua is very far to being a democracy, becoming a dictatorship directed by a family. The consolidation of a totalitarian state is expressed through repressive laws, censorship to the criticism and journalism, and political pressure, imprisonment. And in May 2021, Ortega started a wave of arbitrary detention. 40 people critical to the regime were stopped, and over 130 people remained to be arbitrarily detained in conditions of irregular detention that are cruel or unjust. And its majority, the accusation of treason to the country without any evidence to support the charges is something that is maybe similar in Guatemala and El Salvador, where we're having neo-dictatorship that are even in the hand of criminal powers that are national and international level. The red regime Ortega Murillo has canceled the judicial nature of over 130 civil societies, even humanitarian and medical organizations. It has closed private universities and has created a massive exodus, not only towards Costa Rica, but also other countries such as the United States. This phase can help as a dialogue, as it's with the Alianza Americas and the organization had to go seek to reflect on how the enormous damage that this regime creates to it, not only to its citizenship, but also its own story, and also the Central American region, and the small opportunities were real, but to change this tragic chapter of the life of Nicaragua, the international community must consider all of the measures of pressure possible against a dictatorship. 4 years after the worst of the Nicaraguan crisis, victims must deserve justice and reparation, and those that are violated any laws and norms against them deserve to be punished and as it was dreamt once by the revolution. Now, this conversation will be moderated by Maria Lidia Delgado. She is a journalist from Nicaragua with over 25 years of technical experience with different means of communication in Nicaragua. As a journalist, as a news journalist, and also project manager, as a freelance journalist of Univision in Managua, Nicaragua. And she has informed in Spanish and English about the severe political crisis and human rights crisis in the country from April 2018 to the mid part of 2021. She recently she built the digital platform Huellas de Impunidad, which is a independent journalist project that looks to contribute to the historic memory of Nicaragua. Over to you, Maria. Thank you, Marco. I'm hearing so much. I'm hearing to your words, and I even forgot to take off the mute. Thank you, Marco, and thank you, Hazel. It's a joy to be able to share with colleagues and people that I know and that I appreciate and respect, as Aide Castillo, who is a human rights defender, who was forced to political exile from October 2018, and former political prison person, and she was also legally suspended, and it was occupied by paramilitary at the foundation of the Institution of Leadership of the Segovias, an organization of human rights defensorship, where Aide was the defender, and currently for the United States, she continues to document violations and human rights and promoting reflections and actions in regards to the transitional translation to the victims of the state repression. We are also accompanied in this panel with my colleague from Wilfredo Malana, who is a journalist of Divergente. He's co-founder of Divergent, who recently won the prize Ortega of Journalism 2021. Wilfredo is also a journalist of the Journal del País in Managua, and also is a journalist for the Guardian and also the Washington Post. He's a former prize of Rey de España in 2018. We're also accompanied in this panel at Damaris Prostán, coordinator of a working table in Europe, the Nicaragua diaspora. She is Nicaraguan. In the United States, she came to the United States in 2003, fleeing political persecution due to her gender and sexual identity and her place of country. She organized unions using techniques of popular education, and she participated in the development of CEUCA, which is the organization of students in the Central American University, where she received her title as a Master in Industrial Development. Currently, she manages political campaigns focused on Afro-descendant equality and inclusion. With Freda Damaris and Aide, we'll be talking about the situation of Nicaragua, that we know we're in the 4th anniversary and the situation has become severe. We'll start with you, Aide, and then we will go to a round of questions. I want us to have 5 minutes for this round of questions, so we can allow people that are joining us through this transmission can also ask questions, and you can respond to that. Aide, you're a part of the civil society, organized civil society. Only yesterday, the National Assembly, that is controlled by the regime of Daniel Ortega and Rosario Murillo, took away your legal personality to 25 NGOs, additional NGOs. To the people that are not connected with Nicaragua, we know that there are they've taken away the legal personality to over 100 NGOs in Nicaragua. Can you explain the rank that goes from NGOs that are human rights defenders to NGOs such as Operation Smile? Why are they being persecuted by the regime? Why is the civil society being persecuted? Could you please turn on your microphone? Yes, right now we have a recount of 137 organizations, NGOs that have been practically, basically confiscated by the regime Ortega Murillo. These organizations, as you properly said in Maria Lili, we are, or we used to be, organizations of the civil society that provided multiple services, and we satisfy different needs to the people of Nicaragua. And these are organizations from the union point of view, such as associations of lawyers and unions and medical unions, teachers unions, environmental organizations of much prestige, such as a Center Humboldt, and also organizations of human rights defense, and also organizations from the cultural area. For example, how it will be hurtful to people of Nicaragua to cancel the legal personality of this organization that founded the poet Ernesto Cardenal, or the Center of Constitutional Rights, that was one organization that contributed to the construction of the current constitution of the Republic of Nicaragua. In reality, the organizations of civil society in this country, in Nicaragua, play a role that is vital, because we can't forget that Nicaragua, even with everything that is said by the dictatorship Ortega Murillo, continues to be the second country, most impoverished country of Latin America. And the regime Ortega Murillo has funded $200 billion from the corporation, and this is the money that could have changed the history of Nicaragua, from being an impoverished country of being a country of enormous capacity, economical and sustainable capacities on a social, political, environmental level. In a way that what the regime has done is basically, they are in a strategy of annihilation of every organization, of all leadership that may promote and defend the rights in the country, and that gives social services to the country of Nicaragua. Thank you, Aide. Yesterday, the writer saying Ramirez, who was in exile, they said they want to silence all of the voices, the dissident voices, all of the voices that are in freedom. What do you think about this? What do they want, a mute state, a mute country? Well, we must remember that from 2007, where the regime Ortega Murillo arrived to the power, there was a process that was really consistent and progressive of limiting everything that had to do with economic, social, political, and fundamental rights, and everything that had to do with the liberties of the individual. At this moment, in Nicaragua, what we have is a state of exception, and in facto exception state. And right now, we're commemorating the 4th anniversary of the Pacific Civic Rebellion of April. And in this moment, we have counted over 156 aggressions from the police, Ortega police, only to the human rights defenders in 10 days, in the last 10 days. What does this mean? It means that the regime does not want to, as we say colloquially, we don't want to leave stone over stone. They are in a strategy of annihilation of all the resistance of compresses that town of the people of Nicaragua that fights for their liberties, and that on November 7th last year said to the regime Ortega Murillo and their electoral farce that they don't consider them as their government, and that it's not a regime that has the support of Nicaragua. In the face of this, the regime is afraid, is that the people of Nicaragua takes the streets recuperates liberties, because they know that the day that the people of Nicaragua is back on the streets, the Ortega regime will be ousted of the power. This is their fear. Their fear is that the people of Nicaragua has been losing that fear that they had against them. Thank you, Aide. And if, well, the civil society has been affected and has paid a very high price. These young people that died because of the protests in Nicaragua 4 years ago. There's over 335 people that have perished in impunity. And even an independent press also has to pay an important price for documenting and giving a voice to those that demand justice and that demand liberty. Wilfredo, how could you describe that impunity that is really present in the independent press for everyone that don't follow closely the subject of Nicaragua, but that we know that we've registered violations of the right of life, especially today? We commemorate 4 years. It was a day like today. They killed a journalist, Angel Gaona, in the city of Bluefield. And their families said that this murder continues to be an impunity, that it was the police that did it. This was on April 21st, a day like today. Wilfredo, how many attacks are still in the impunity towards the independent press? Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity. Today is 1 year after the crime of Angel Laguna that continues to be in impunity, as well as 360 people that were murdered in the hands of police and paramilitary in 2018. The independent journalism has been an open enemy of the government of Daniel Ortega. Journalism became vital at that moment, and together with the citizenship that was documenting violations to human rights, and journalism started to document, to denounce, and the government from the get-go started to censor. I remember they took out 101% noticias out of the air, and then journalism started doing research and reported that showed extrajudicial executions, that people were shooting to kill, that police were shooting to kill. I even did some research with emails from Rosario Murillo, where it was proven that a bit of those odors of repression, and it was also done by the rest of the independent journalism, they started to resist. And after the censorship, there was an explosion of digital media to be able to continue to inform in Nicaragua. And the end of 2018, the government hits in a frontal way the media. They confiscate the redaction of 100% noticias and also Confidencial, and they aggress us, and they caused a first wave of journalists. Over 80 journalists went into exile, and then we went back to Nicaragua with the hope of being able to exert our constitutional right to do journalism and inform the people in the face of this election process that was a farce in 2021, and that the government attacked the media again starting on June 2020, using the prosecutor's office, such as the case of the money laundering against the Violeta Chamorro Association, and using those ad hoc laws as the law of cyber crime. So I was actually threatened by one of the prosecutors with 8 years of prison, which is the reason why I'm currently in exile. The government has gone against the media, and they've done a very valuable labor to trying to get close to the narrative, trying to dismount this false narrative that was created by the government in regards to the April protests, negating the massacre. There were crimes against humanity. A few weeks ago, the President Murillo, that everything that happened in April was theater. And journalism shows to the vice president, and it proves that this narrative, it's that they assassinated people, that they have political prisoners, that they have gone to become Nicaragua a country without hope. There are over 80,000 Nicaraguans have left in Nicaragua in the last year, and they're crossing the river to go to the United States. And there is a state of a sustained repression from 2018, but the repression in Nicaragua has had different stages. Right now, we're in the stage of the perpetration in the country of Daniel Ortega's after these fake elections, but that doesn't mean that repression has ended. All of the critical fronts in Nicaragua are victims of the government. The last ones are the musicians that have been creating music. There are 4 musicians and producers that are imprisoned. Tomorrow we have a space in the hand to talk about this. And I called the 20 musicians, and no one wants to talk because they're afraid, because everyone in Nicaragua are living in a state of terror. Those critical voices are under the mercy that it can be attacked for cyber then maybe there was a criticism on a Facebook that they don't like it, or maybe you can be accused of treason against the country, or even they can send you to prison as musicians, because the government hasn't even informed what's their location and other musical producers. So it's a bit how things are living and doing in Nicaragua, but especially how this is lived by those critical voices that are being shut down in its totality in the country. Thank you, Wilfredo. And yes, in Nicaragua, we see the wide range of sectors that have been persecuted, from civil society, as we started with idea and journalism, farmers, and entrepreneurs that are in prison, students that are in prison, and human rights defenders that are part of the 107 political prisoners. And now I reconnect with Damaris. Damaris, you left Nicaragua before the time of Daniel Ortega. It went back to the country because Daniel Ortega went back to the country in 2002 to power in 2006, and you are in the diaspora that has many moments of migration. The diaspora that has been being built since the 80s, the diaspora that's been throughout the 90s due to economical reasons mostly, but now, as Wilfredo says, we are seeing announcing an exit of Nicaraguans from Nicaragua. Many of them sadly have perished in the River Bravo, but fleeing from repression. How does this connect, and what is the role played by the diaspora with Nicaragua, with the repressions, and the diaspora in different moments is interconnecting currently? Yes, first of all, thank you, Maria Lili, and thank you, Alianza Americas, and thank you, everyone. After 4 years, this is an example that after 4 years, we continue to be talking about this. We haven't stopped talking about it. One of the interesting things that happens with the Nicaraguan diaspora is that it's a bit the difference between other diasporas, that us Nicaraguans, we are not a diaspora that migrated for economic reasons, as such the case of others, diasporas in Central America. In our case, if you see the historical moments, 40 years ago, a large group of Nicaraguans left for a political situation. Now, it's another group of Nicaraguans that are fleeing the country for a political situation. And we're all in the middle of this. So we migrated in the 2000s. We continue being part of that diaspora. What interconnects us between Nicaraguans at different moments that we have emigrated and the ones that have become in the diaspora now, and we open the arms to those people in exile, that they find an organized diaspora, a politically educated diaspora, and that we know what we have to do. And it's in that way that the diaspora not only becomes an agent of denunciation. We converse with the Nicaraguan people, because we have the diaspora of 40 years old, where we re-encounter with that diaspora, and it's there where we find that it says, I was in the fight 40 years ago in a dictatorship. I was part of that. I will continue being part of this. The diaspora is the historical pressure of the people of Nicaragua from outside of the country to continue in the fight to look for that democracy. It's where we see a diaspora, a politically active diaspora, a politically educated diaspora. We are not people in economic exile. We are political people in exile. So it's in our advocacy, we have grown as a diaspora. We have matured as a diaspora. In the diaspora, we were always depending. We were always looking for Nicaragua. Because of that, because we're interconnected by the fact of continue to insist being in Nicaraguans, and they took away the right to be in your country, to contribute for your country, for merely political situations. So when you appear here with the diaspora and you get involved in the society, you immerse in the society, and you learn to do laws as the one that we've learned to do as Renacer, and even the TPS, because we send the new assignations for the Nicaraguans to come here in exile, and they find in us as a diaspora, a political active diaspora, and contributing to those changes that we need to help to go for that Nicaragua that we dreamt for. And now I'll go back to you, Aide, and I would like to mix a question that we had with a question from Oscar Chacon, who tells us, who asks us, what can we do as organizations and individuals in a concrete and tangible way to contain the dictatorship and to support the people of Nicaragua and their genuine aspirations for democracy? And I ask you, from where it comes from, what is asked by the citizen, Aide, you said that the regime is looking to annihilate the civil society. What can civil society do that is an exile, taking into consideration that Nicaraguans that are outside of Nicaragua, within Nicaragua, are remaining silent because they are afraid of being the following victims of the repression? The people that is within Nicaragua, we are aware that even with the state of exception that are in danger, the people of Nicaragua continues to resist even with their silence. Right now, we have reports these last days and these last hours, even last night, of people that are fleeing to safe houses, maybe because they tried to go to the streets with a flag to commemorate Alvarito Conrado, who was assassinated yesterday, or because they distributed a flyer, or because maybe we even have reports of Monsoting, Nueva Segovia, that the police came to a religious gathering where people were gathered were fasting also and commemorating the victims of Ortega. And we know of cases that have come to with the mother of one of the people that was murdered, that she will never get back her child by asking her to not go to the mass where they are asking for the victims. This is an example because the people of Nicaragua that is within the country, it is extremely dignified and continues to resist. But even with those achievements that were mentioned by Adamaris, the regime continues to hurt them severely. What is that we can do from the outside what can we continue doing? We have come to a moment where there is this level of angst, collective concern, because we feel that the regime no longer understand with calls that doesn't understand with or resolutions from the OEA. We need to go to a new moment. And this fourth anniversary, over 70 organizations have engaged to give a qualitative number data, because that's what we need to do now. We need to transcend from a fight that was called upon to a fight that is better organized, more structured. And I think that we need to define a strategy that is agreed upon all of the actors, political, economical, and social actors, and environmental actors. We need to work in the unity and action, and to leave to the side for the moment those agendas, those particular agendas, sector agendas, to adopt a strategy of recovery of the nation. And this, what it represents, is to take away a product of our sustained work, the last links that are left to the regime, which are, on one side, we have to do a face fronting fight to talk with the states that have actions and the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, and the BCA, and all of these financial structures, and tell them that is unheard of that they continue to give loans to the regime that are used to sustain the patrols, paramilitary forces, and all the repression against the people of Nicaragua. We have to motivate to visit the ministries of foreign affairs of each country to ask of them that as they declared the election as illegitimate, this needs to be translated in actions of political isolation. This that we are saying is that we need a work that is concerted, that's more efficient, because the people of Nicaragua can't stand it anymore. And as I said yesterday in a conversation that we were having with parliamentarians from Europe, the situation in Nicaragua is not bearable, can't hold any more statements. That is important, but we need concrete actions that will limit the actions of the regime. Regime can no longer be treated as a democracy. It's a dynasty. It's a dictatorship. It's not even revolutionary or Christian or socialist. It acts as a crime, as organized crime. This means, Maria Lili, that we have an enormous challenge. The people of Nicaragua decided that this struggle will no longer be armed, but it will be civic and pacific. The question is, how do we go about it? How can we challenge a regime with a civic and pacific fight? This demands more strategy, more conscious, more unity of us, and also putting apart those differences to put ourselves and center ourselves in the fact that all of us right now, what we urge to have is the ousting of the dictatorship from power. While there's a dictatorship in Nicaragua, no life projects are possible, even for those that believe that the dictatorship, as it was said by the former ambassador of the Organization of American States. Thank you, Aide. I'm going to ask a bit more about that organization a little bit further. There are people that are asking about that as well. What Eliseo Nunez has said, that we are lacking, we need more organization from the opposition, civic groups, and also from the political opposition in Nicaragua. But I will go back to Wilfredo. Among this persisting repression during 4 years, because as you said, Wilfredo, this repression, what has done is that it has been in stages. But in the case of journalism, there have been many researches that have been done, as the one that you produced. They were shooting to kill, research that divulged confidently from the confidential about corruption of the regime of Daniel Ortega's. And I could continue adding exhaustive work and complete research done about the repressive character of the regime of Ortega. And I could say that it would seem as if nothing is happening. Why do we continue doing journalism from you in exile? Why do journalists continue to do journalism about this? In principle, with an engagement with the country, as journalists, I think that journalism, it's not giving up, and I think that we can't allow ourselves to lose our strength. Of course, we're producing information in a dictatorship, but there isn't a judge, even less a judge that will process those responsible of the massacre of 2018. But I think that the importance of continue doing journalism and to persist on this is to leave the memory and proof of what happened in a moment of international justice to look for those responsible, that people that were in charge of they have resources to understand what happened, who were the responsible people. And I think that's a bit of the importance of that saying that says that journalism is like the first resource, the first hand that history makers look for in the future. It can be lawyers, it can be institutions, when they're in charge of giving justice. But as you will say, it's hard. If you go into any means of communication, no one is signing their document except for those that are in exile, because journalists are also afraid. They are also persecuted. It's really hard right now to do covering, because there's a police state. You can't go with a camera as we used to do it, because you immediately get the police on you, or you get agreements with the government. There aren't sources. All information sources are in prison. They're exiled, or they on auto censor themselves. There's an enormous auto censorship, not only from journalists but also the citizens that wanted they used to add in Facebook things. If you see, most of them, the profiles of people, citizens, are under pseudonyms because they are afraid to express their opinions, because there are 14 people that have been processed for cyber terrorism. A message on Twitter, a message on WhatsApp, and many of those proof are montages of people that had a process with the proofs on Twitter and fake proofs. So that gives us an idea how hard it is to do journalism. And this is a challenge for us in exile. How do we manage reduction? Let's say in the case of 98% of people that are within. So what is the day-to-day to manage the fear of the reporters? How can I from exile can send someone on the street to do the report? And we face the similar, yeah, of course you're cool over there because you're outside. And how to recognize the fear of each reporter, how to deal with that. And also it's very expensive to get safe transport. We have had a lot of reduction to have to move around journalists from houses because they're being persecuted. So it's very complex. It's a daily chess game, but I think that in the end it's worth it, because even with all of this attack from the government of Ortega, I think one of the last spaces that he can't take down is journalism, and he hasn't been able to shut down the journalism, even with the censorship, even if it's closed media, even. Yeah, of course, media has closed. There are other means of journalism has closed, but there continue to have new expressions of journalism that are born in the country. And I think that is the great deception of the government, because I can't shut up the journalists. It's really hard, because I think the journalism is done on the streets. It's you do it by getting your feet dirty, but we need to do it from exile. We need to reinvent ourselves. While we don't, while we are still talking, then we're still fighting. And Damaris, with everything that is happening in Nicaragua and the landscape that was just described by Wilfredo and Aide, how does this connect it to the diaspora? And I'm having some comments right now that are asking us, what diaspora? Who are the diaspora? And what is the role of the diaspora? That this comments on our streaming. How does the diaspora connect to the challenge of having more organizations, as I may stated? Well, who is the diaspora? The diaspora is the one that has been in the last 4 years having on its shoulders the responsibility to denounce everything that is happening in Nicaragua. Because as Wilfredo said before, the people that they have on the inside, we are for that love, for that connection, for that relationship of never forgetting where we come from, never forgetting our roots. There's many Nicaraguans that are continue sending us information. I can tell you that 90% of the information that the Nacerla came from Nicaragua, from our spaces Nicaragua. People that are telling you what's happening in Nicaragua, people that are sending you those grotesque pictures how they're killing the farmers, what they are doing in the area of the Atlantic coast of Nicaragua. So that's the diaspora. we have, and with the people of Nicaragua, we have matured, and despite such as the social movements are not linear or cyclic. They are like an AKG. We have our ups and downs. I remember clearly that 1 year ago, we were doing our first demonstration here in New York. And at that moment, we said, we're not from the left, we're not from the right. We are Nicaraguans for Nicaragua. And in that moment, we continue with the responsibility that we do accept as in Nicaragua, that we continue to denounce, to continue ensuring that because we're not an economical entity only, because many times we know that we are perceived in that way. But in the last 4 years of fighting, we have proven that we have matured with our differences, because we have had differences. For example, Daniel Ortega and even the dictatorship has wanted to ensure that the diaspora is in a certain way divided, that what they've tried to put people that will create this rift or division, and specialists in doing so. We have perceived it and we have realized it, but we continue as a diaspora in the role of, as I said before, not only denouncing, but we are the diaspora that has taken the responsibility, because we know that the people in Nicaragua can't do it. So you know that you see on November 7th, world protests ensuring the people of Nicaragua doesn't have to leave their houses, and saying to the dictatorship without silence, here is the people of Nicaragua, resilient and outside, we're denouncing and continue moving forward. So the world realizes, because in the shoulders of the diaspora, we also have a process of educating the world, because in the world, people were mistaken. How is it possible that 40 years ago you did a revolutionary process that was so beautiful, where many people from the outside were inspired? When you have no idea how hard it was for us here in diaspora in the United States to re-educate all of those groups in the United States that had it of influence, because it wasn't the revolution that they fell in love with in the 80s. This is a dictatorship. This is a dynasty. We had in the diaspora, we had to do that whole process of educating ourselves internally and the process of organization, and also educating the politicians of the United States. For example, so we can make this law a reality. The diaspora in Nicaragua achieved things when the government of Nicaragua was extremely polarized, which is the time of the President Trump. It was the only entity that achieved that over 400 politicians in the U.S. agreed to approve these two laws that were approved, that are so hurtful to the regime, and the regime knows that it can go against it, because they don't have a way to shut us up, because we're an educated diaspora. We're a diaspora that we have learned to organize ourselves with our differences, with our mistakes, but that we are working to ensure that Nicaragua continues to be in the forefront, continues to be on the table, continues to be a priority. This week, there was what is Renacer, which is the study that we were giving information to ensure that the TAFTA is really reviewed and continue taking away oxygen to the regime. Thank you, Damaris. I have a few questions from citizens that are participating in this streaming. This is a subject about remittances. Skyfeet, I don't know if I'm saying your last name properly. If I'm not, then my apologies. Kate says that I just heard commented that the remittances that are so considerable in the Nicaraguan economy can oxygenate the regime, as well as give relief to the population. What do you think about this? Aide, Wilfredo, Damaris, who would like to start? Yeah, when it comes to the remittances, it is a fact that the regime and this strategy of annihilation has a policy of state to promote and expulse citizens of Nicaragua towards the political exile and economical exile, with the objective of that all of this population continues to send and go over the statistics of over 12% of the budget, and also the gross net product in Nicaragua is provided by remittances. And now that the expulsion of citizens have grown, I'm sure that those proportions have increased seriously. So the person that asked this is completely right. The remittances have a double action. On one side, they contribute to the families, but on the other side, they give oxygen to the regime with the dynamization of the economy, because the regime controls the most part of the companies that generate the riches, and from which themselves do maintain their own businesses, in a way that this has been a debate, and here this is known by Damaris and Wilfredo, that we have had when it comes to remittances. It's really hard to tell people that are living on the outside don't send money to the people that are inside, because recently the food organization what are within the 3 countries of America, Latin America, where the people are worse fed and have less access to food security, only substituted by Venezuela and Haiti. This is the one side, and on the other side, what we have said in many occasions is the regime, we need to weaken it, that when we send those remittances, and let's ask our family members that in the first place, they consume the smallest amount of fuel possible, because this is a business that generates a lot of resources to the government, to the regime. That the population of Nicaragua saves on electricity, because this is where the regime has resources that are coming, that the people of Nicaragua consumes in the small markets and not in the big chains, that they stop consuming liquor and sumptuary products, and they can invest remittances only in things of first need, not only to just not oxygenate the people, but also the people in exile is going through through many situations due to COVID, due to many reasons, and also the irregular situation in which they are in. So I think that the subject of remittances, there has to be a lot of collective conscience on how they are used. But beyond that, remittances, we also need organization of all of these people that are on the outside, that are looking for channels of communication, whether they're from the diaspora or the exiled, together, and to get together in this strategy, and in a better thought strategy, to continue debilitating the regime. And on this, it's definitely a very complex subject. Berta is saying remittances oxygenate Ortega, but the important thing is that our families are sustained and they survive from this. Remittances have to contain, and this is not a subject of discussion, is said by a participant. Wilfredo, you did a work that was you just shared. It's called the perverse gain that comes from the made from Ortega from the Nicaraguan exodus. Can you share a bit more about this? And basically, not to repeat, and it's what's said by Aide. Remittances have two faces. They are necessary for families, because people, if not, people in Nicaragua will die of hunger. But the government is one of the main income that maintain the economy of the country. So it's something very difficult, and this is one of those subjects that doesn't have a really solution or a definite answer to it. I have another question from the participants, Oscar Chacon and independent of the panelists and the political reality in Costa Rica with the recent elections, the situation of Guatemala and El Salvador, which parallels do you see between the reality of Nicaragua with the relation of their neighbors in the region? Wilfredo, would you like to go a bit further? You're part of Central American newsroom. To talk about it in general terms, I think Ortega has become a reference for all of the authoritarians that are coming up in the region. They have seen themselves in the mirror of Ortega, and they see they can govern with impunity, even if it's a mirage that can be broken. In the practice, it does work. A clear case is Bukele in El Salvador that has simulated two laws as the ones in Ortega. But he also has an open war against journalism, and using this war against gangs have reduced the constitutional rights of the Salvadorians, and it's really severe what's happening. Same thing in Guatemala with a lower intensity, but there's also journalists that are dying, prosecutors that they're investigating corruption have to go into exile, and I think there are over 20 judicial public officers that have had to flee the country, and now we see a change of government in Honduras. We don't know where they're going, but they're starting to show certain signs of vouching for it to get alert against certain colleagues. And now it's in Costa Rica, the things that with Rodrigo Chávez, that it seemed that it's very likely, but at least we would like to have a bit of a totalitarian color to it. But Daniel Ortega is definitely a nefarious reference and has become a model a role model. And we see that Central America, sadly, is a region that is in a setback. We're going back on it. You've lived a bit more in the decade of the 80s. Central America was a space of war, of a civil war in many countries. And now it's a zone that is really problematic, over 30 years over and 35 years afterwards. Yeah, I think the situation that is being lived happening in the region is extremely concerning. And it's a reflection that the agreements of peace of the 90s didn't give those fruits. That were not even the ones that were expected, and what of those governments engaged to do so. What we are living today is that it's not true what was offered, because the system of Central American integration comes from this agreements of peace, by saying that we were going to have a Central America of peace, democracy, liberty, and development. And what we have seen is actually a severeness and a reestablishment. The only thing that was changed was the actors. Before, we used to have military dictatorships. Now we have failed states. We have those phenomenons. We have the phenomena of the delinquency of organized crimes, and everything has to do with drug trafficking. That was before thought it was Central America was a zone of just transit or pass, and it's become an area where drug trafficking activity is staying and generating this structure of society that is really severe. In this sense, I think that the main lesson for us Central Americans is that there isn't a good dictatorship, not from the right side or the left. This is not a problem of ideology. This is a problem of a system, an economical and political system, a neoliberal that as such it is created based basically on the fact that the money is the fundamental thing, and life goes to a second level, to a second plane, that the state of the rule of law and institutionality are no longer important, but it's more important the gains of the big corporation and extractivism. So I think that we have the situation of Guatemala in crisis, the situation of El Salvador in crisis, the situation of Honduras that is in a transit that, as Wilfredo said, we don't know what will happen, what will come of it, in a way that the citizens of the region we need to be an alert, and also to go to the conclusion that in over 200 years of independence, our region continues to be the most inequitable of the world, and that all of these governments of right, left, the center are leaving us a region that is in red numbers. And this is why this is the moment to unify, to strengthen ourselves from civil society and throughout the region. What's happening in the journalists in Nicaragua is not far away of what's happening in El Salvador. And imagine that the organization, the NGOs, we did our asking, well, they closed our organizations in Nicaragua. What's the situation in El Salvador? The situation in El Salvador, they would say civil society is the same as in Nicaragua with the foreign agents. Situation in Honduras also. But on the other side, I think there is an important lesson that is happening today with the extradition of Juan Orlando Hernandez. What does this mean? It means that for us, the citizenship of the people, there isn't a power that isn't destructible. We saw a president that was completely protected, that was doing businesses, that was the only president that went to the transition of power and the election farce of Ortega, and that is now being extradited. What does this mean? If civil society decides to do so, or the citizenship, the people, we organize ourselves well. We ask to prevail our right because we are a majority, that we really can't achieve it. But this demands much organization, creativity, responsibility, and a leadership that assumes the guiding in this. I have only 3 minutes. I want to finish with Damaris because there's a question from Berta Sales, and it says, Maria Lili, I'd like to ask you to talk a bit about what is being done to look for protection of deportation for those that are fleeing Nicaragua. We can't leave those in exile alone. Damaris, I only have 2 minutes. I wish to continue the conversation, but we have to finish this. Really quickly, there are channels within us as a diaspora. We are supporting Nicaraguans that are sadly in that situation, that are risking that situation because they don't have any other options. As diaspora, we always ask people that they take care of themselves. We can't ask them to not come here, but we can't promote that they to do something illegal because we can't do that because of our social responsibility here. But the diaspora has connections from Guatemala, Mexico, and within the United States, we have a complete network of legal expressions that have been supporting us within civil society of the United States and us as diaspora to ensure the minimum conditions of information that can be provided to the people that are living in this. Is there a number or an email where people can write to? I will add it on the chat. I'm going to add a link on the chat so that people can access to those resources to which where we having access. Us as the diaspora, we often receive 5-10 calls every day of people we don't even know asking us for help, asking us for information. I will add the links so that you can please access these spaces of information, of legal information, and you can get some help. Also, diasporas, we are really interconnected, and we know that people in Houston and California, people in New York and Colorado, where there was always going to be a Nicaraguan in the United States. And thank you. And with this, I would like to thank Marco, thank Hazel, thank Wilfredo, Aide, Adamaris for your time. I know that this conversation could continue going, but I hope that the people that have joined us are there with they have their kept some very valuable ideas of the critical situation of human rights that is being lived in Nicaragua, those challenges that are there, and also some of the actions that that organisms, civic organizations want to do, and what is the role that is played by the press, independent press. I think that with this moderation, I'm going to stop here because we're out of time. Marco, Hazel, I don't know if you would like to do some closing remarks. Or do we close here? Just to thank everyone for being here. Maria Vivi for this incredible coordination of the event. The moderation has been amazing. And thank everyone, all of the panelists, Wilfredo Marisaide, and the people that have joined us today. We would like to invite you to be always on the lookout on their social media, the work of Alianza Americas, and for to know about future actions. Thank you, everyone.